My name is Anwar Ibrahim from Malaysia. I used to be the Deputy Prime Minister of Malaysia. I'm now opposition leader, waiting for the final Supreme Court, Federal Court decision whether to affirm a conviction of 5 years or enhance the imprisonment sentence in a matter of days or weeks, or to be acquitted of the charges. It's great to be back here at Georgetown University. And my wife, Aziza, used to tell me the best years are spent here at the university. This discourse about education, excellence without a soul, must resonate quite well here because the issue of faith, values, ethics, social justice is strongly entrenched and embedded at Georgetown University. I'll share for a moment my journey, not as elaborate as Ithaca. Aziza would paraphrase that Robert Frost, less traveled to seldom traveled, or travel only by crazy people. So, these were 70s. I was a student leader, social activist. In the northern provinces, reports of grinding poverty, of even starvation. So we led mass demonstrations. And the response was mass arrests. And although demonstrations only took about 2 weeks, I was then detained under the notorious Internal Security Act, like the sedition laws introduced by the then colonial English rule, but still applied. Mass arrest becomes then mass detentions. So it was 2 years. Internal Security Act means no trial, no due process, just one mighty pen, and that's it. 2 years, 10 years, purely a discretion of the Minister of Home Affairs. Then, after 2 years, I was released. I continue my work with Muslim youth, Malaysian youth, the Christians, Buddhists, the Hindus in the Malaysian Youth Council, talking about reform, social justice, and freedom and democracy. Always believed that Malaysia, as a developing country, must mature as a democracy, must respect rule of law, freedom of conscience. And then I joined the government believing seriously in the need for reform within the system of governance. I rose very quickly from deputy minister to finance minister, and deputy prime minister. And this sort of reports like from time does not actually help, because the bosses do not like naturally that you are seen to be a serious competitor. Now, then, of course, came the dreadful incident of September 1998. Because I was clamoring for reform and change within the system, introduced some major changes into the anti-corruption laws, I naturally had to face the wrath of the very corrupt in the country. Malaysia, as you know, in the 1990s, was a star in Southeast Asia. Highest growth, highest market capitalization, second to Singapore in terms of competitiveness, highest in terms of foreign direct investments. But we have a major problem of growing Gini coefficient between the very rich and the poor. The inequality became a problem, and the issue of institutional governance has not been addressed. And so when there was growing criticism against some of the obsolete policies, including semi-authoritarian form of governance. Then I took it up within the system, hoping to reform, and as a result, this was the treatment. I was arrested and badly assaulted, as you know, and I had the honor of being assaulted not by a normal policeman, but by the Inspector General of Police himself. You see, so that what I've learned in my experience is when you are in power, make sure you don't appoint too tough a police chief. Now, this was the result. A huge gathering. The beautiful lady there is my wife. And in Malaysia, and the police reaction as expected, anticipated, police brutality, mass arrest. So this was actually the close-up of the picture after 5 days of being assaulted to near death, lethal, by the then Inspector General of Police. And the response by the then Prime Minister was, well, Anwar is a showman, is self-inflicted. But thanks to the support of the international media, civil society organization, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and many other similar organizations, civil society, and also international support from friends. Mary Robinson, who met my daughter and gave her time and support and encouragement. John Howard of Australia, Habibie of Indonesia, Estrada of the Philippines, and of course, my great friend Al Gore, who was very clear and pronounced in the remarks in defense of freedom and support for the reformasi, for the need for reform. So 6 years of solitary confinement. After the first 2 years, it becomes 8. Now, this was my home for 6 years. Not that bad, actually. I still have a bed. And this is a period for contemplation, meditation, reading the classics, 4.5 times of the entire works of Shakespeare with copious notes. So you envision doing that, go to prison. You have all the time in the world. And the great classics. Of course, many of my colleagues here, dons, deans, were very helpful. They just sent books. And so you have time to meditate, read the classics, read religious texts, the Quran, the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, Confucius, and of course all the classics from Anna Akhmatova to Pasternak to you name it. And, but not all. I mean, I was addressing a major gathering of Muslim clerics after I was released. Of course, they expected me just to say, I was there meditating, reading the Quran, memorizing, praying, which I did. But I also did other things. I was busy also singing. Elvis Presley, Ricky Nelson, Neil Sedaka, and the Beatles. And even some Hindi songs and national songs. So I did, so it's a lot of advantage. You start memorizing songs from now. Because when you get into trouble, there's time to reflect and relax, and by singing loudly, and nobody disturbs you. Now, and then September 2004, the federal court, the Supreme Court, overturned the decision, and I was a free man. And one of the first visits was the invitation of Mandela. Invited the entire family to Joburg. And let me pause a little and see about my long conversations with Mandela. He was looking at the children, very young those days, in 2004. And there was a tinge of sadness when he remarked, Anwar, I'm sorry I was not able to do more for you. But when looking at my children, he says, you know, they say we are crazy. Precisely by inflicting harm not only yourself, but your wife, your kids, and your friends. I then responded, say, Madiba, you know, we call him Madiba, with affection. But at least we are not mad, but crazy for sure. But you know, we derive so much strength and support from just knowing you and reading about you. I said I was in prison, and one of the great books was The Long Walk to Freedom. And mine is certainly a short walk to freedom. Then he was out laughing. But this legendary, great Mandela was not talking about his trials and tribulations, just focusing on mine. And I get a bit embarrassed because it was nothing compared to what he had to endure. Because we believe in a cause. But I would, again, refer to Georgetown. Because after I was released, other than a short stint at Oxford, at Johns Hopkins, President Dsai, Professors Esposito and John Wall invited me to join the teaching staff here. And as I said, I reiterate, it's a great institution because I share a lot of, in terms of my understanding of the concept of education, the philosophy, the ideals, in terms of excellence and honor and dignity, ethics and morality, which is here strongly embedded in this great institution. Now, then 2008, in fact, I had to leave because I was involved in leading the broad coalition of the opposition in the 2008 general elections in Malaysia. Now, when you talk about elections, it is not just elections as you know. No, we don't have a free media. I don't have 1 minute of airtime on television, but still we got a substantial number of support at that time. Now, because of the support, the international media covers it to hell and back, not knowing that soon afterwards it's back to hell. You see? Because this was really demanding for free, fair elections. Because in 2013 election last year, we garnered 53% of the popular vote. Don't look surprised. I'm still leader of the opposition. But this was it. So I had something in common with Al Gore. But this explains the role of the youth. They demanded that I appear in black, and I hate it. Then there was this huge campaign in the Facebook, Anwar, come in black. 2 days notice. And this was rarely supported by the youth, condemning the fraud in the elections because of the fact that we garnered 53% of the support and still not able to govern. Now, I alluded to earlier about the High Court acquittal, then Court of Appeal convicted me 5 years imprisonment for what we call a sodomy 2. It's a sequence. And this is sodomy with clear clinical findings of no penetration. It can only happen to a superman like me. Now, so now I've been given a choice. Many friends here, including former Vice President Al Gore, asking me, why do you need to return? Knowing the system of governance and rule of law in Malaysia. I told him, I owe it to the Malaysians. How do I explain to my young friends, children, to continue the struggle for reform, for justice, for Malays, Chinese, Indians, the indigenous people of Sabah and Sarawak, if I opt for an easier route and leaving them to continue with the struggle? So I have to return. And am blessed with a great family. Aziza and the children were not only supportive, but fully committed to the ideas of the struggle. And more important, I owe it to the Malaysians. Malays, Chinese, ethnic Indians, the Iwans and the Kadazans, who believe in the cause of that struggle for freedom, for democracy, for the rule of law, for freedom of conscience. And if it requires a small effort and sacrifice, it has to be done. And I'm grateful for the support, not only from Malaysians, but also from other parts of the world, including graduates from this university. You know, one of the most active with the support, and their support for the social network, Facebook, Twitter, are graduates from Georgetown. So I must use this occasion also to thank them for all the support. We will have, I remain optimistic. I mean, the case will be decided no matter days or weeks. If the federal court, for example, decide the date, then I have to return immediately. Today, tomorrow, I don't know. But I'm optimistic. But if the worst case scenario, I have to return, not to the country, but to the prison, then please lend me some good classics so they can spend time reading. But I think the cause for democracy, for freedom, for justice is not a theoretical construct. It's what Tocqueville has referred to as habits of the heart. It's an issue of conviction, an issue of courage of conviction, of tenacity of purpose. So it is faith and values. It is ethics. It is a principle that you cannot compromise with. You are born to be free. No dictator, no authoritarian leader can rob that freedom from you. Thank you.